Hello, Stitchers. Welcome to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. I'm your host, Lisa Woolfork. I'm a fourth-generation sewing enthusiast with more than 20 years of sewing experience. I am looking forward to today's conversation, so sit back, relax, and get ready to get your stitch together. Hey friends, hey, it's Lisa from Black Women Stitch and the Stitch Please podcast, and I am excited to welcome you to another episode of the Stitch Please podcast. This, as I always say, is a very special episode because this episode, we are talking with none other than quilter extraordinaire, Kimberly Cartwright. Kimberly Cartwright is a stunningly, amazingly powerful art quilter. She has been doing this for a little tiny bit of time, and that is ironic because she's been doing it a while. Her work has been exhibited locally in North Carolina, nationally throughout the US, and internationally throughout the world. You can find her quilts in Folk Art Magazine, Quilting Arts Magazine, all of these places where prestigious American quilters find their work. You can find the work of Kimberly Cartwright. So welcome, Kimberly Cartwright. And one more thing I could also throw in, she's also a quilting event organizer. I had the great pleasure to meet and work with Kimberly back in 2020, was that 2023?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Back in 2023 for a convergence of African-American quilters. And we will not talk about that too much today because we're going to have a whole separate episode about it. But you see the phrase, a convergence of African-American quilters, and instantly I felt invited, I felt seen, I felt recognized, and I knew that I could go there and feel and be cherished. So Kimberly Cartwright not only makes stunning art quilts, she creates spaces for more Black creativity to flourish. And for that, we say thank you and welcome Kimberly to the Stitch Please podcast.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that introduction. I appreciate you. I love you. I love your strength. I love the fact that you will go out and create a podcast specifically for sewists to give sewists space and an opportunity. So when I grow up, I want to be just like you, Lisa. You inspire me. And you mentioned that we met at Kindred Spirits, a convergence of African-American quilters in Durham, North Carolina. Well, y'all, let me tell you how we met. My friend Candace Thomas listens to your podcast, and she said, "Do you know Lisa? You know Lisa?" I was like, "No, I don't know her." I listened to your podcast, and I called you to talk to you because Candace said that we would be a good match. I called you and told you about Kindred Spirits, and you said, "I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm just gonna show up." And not only did you show up, and I'm getting a little teary-eyed here because it's so beautiful. Not only did you show up, like my Thursday night event was, people just being around each other, getting to know each other, and popping up a quilt show. But you came and you bought all your AccuQuilt stuff, plus bags, fabric, anything that it would take to be able to create an AccuQuilt project. And you gave that. You gave that to everyone who would stand in line to be able to create a project. And that was that was so kind. I've experienced kindness, but that was a level of kindness that I had not experienced. And it just took me to another level because you helped me to have an activity for people that will help them heal. And people are so excited for those bags.
Listen, you think people ain't never seen no canvas tote bag before. They was excited.
They were excited.
We got so much fabric at home, and they were like, "Look at this fabric." I'm like, "Girl, you got the same fabric at the house."
They were so excited. They were standing in line. They were choosing their fabric. They were giddy. They were just talking about just life and being. And in that moment, it was like we didn't have a care in the world except to be able to receive. So you are a giver. And those women just received your blessing. And that's how we met. And I don't care what happens in this world. I will love you. I will love you. I will love you. I will love you because you love us
I
and you
listen.
show us how to love. And that, my friend, you will always be my friend. I don't even care. We fall out and we don't speak. I'll still be like having love down in the bottom of my heart for you.
I
Because
appreciate you so much. This is so beautiful, and it means a lot to me as well because this is what community looks like. This is what community does and require. I was so fortunate, and shout out to AccuQuilt
yes.
for helping, for making sure we had what we needed, and so it was a beautiful collaboration. And this is also a great example of what you have created.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful, I think, connection to your work overall and how you imagine telling stories with quilts. Because when we tell our stories, we also build connections with other people. And your work does that. You made me feel invited, so I came and bought my whole self.
I know.
And that is what you do. And I think that is worth recognizing and celebrating and repeating. But before we repeat it, we are going to get started with the very first question, which is how did you get started quilting in the first place? What is your sewing story?
Well, I moved to Durham, North Carolina in 2002. And the same Candace Thomas that I mentioned a little bit earlier became my friend in Durham, North Carolina. And she knew that I was a sewing person, a sewist. And she said, well, if you can sew, you can make a quilt. And I said, well, I'll try. And she said, if you make a quilt, we'll make sure that that quilt gets into our next quilt show with the African American Quilt Circle of Durham. And I said, "Woo, that sounds like fun." So I traipsed off to like a local scrap store. It's called the Scrap Exchange in Durham, North Carolina. And I'm looking through scraps, and I found some even discarded or some pieces that were in need of love that had come from somebody else's quilt that they didn't finish.
Ooh,
And I incorporated those pieces into a quilt, and it was just like strips. I just sewed strips together, strip after strip after strip after strip, and made a quilt, took it to the quilt circle to thunderous applause. Thunderous applause. And
I
I
love that.
didn't more know about how to make a quilt than the man in the moon. But my representation, my representation of a quilt at that time was enough. It was enough for those women. They celebrated me. And from that, I was like, I found my people. These are my people. These right here, my people. And
I
I've been
love
a part of
it.
that group for almost 25 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
girl, I'm so excited. So I mean, I know these women and we've known each other and we've cried and celebrated together. So that's how I got my quilt start. And then like that first quilt that I made, there was this woman from a French magazine. She was taking pictures of the quilts, and how about my quilt popped up in the magazine. So I started
Wait,
crying when I
the very first, wait, are you, just to review, you decided to make a quilt because Candace Thomas, who we love, Candace Thomas, also a quilt artist in Durham, North Carolina, said to you, I bet you could make a quilt. And if you do, we'll put it in a quilt show. Now, I can tell y'all, it is not very common to have one's first quilt be in a quilt show. But you felt like, okay, I got a home for this. Let me go ahead and see what I can do. You take it to the quilt guild, the quilt circle, you show it. People are like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Next thing you know, your quilt is in a French magazine.
quilt mania. Quilt
You're
mania.
very, oh my gosh. Can you
Quilt,
describe that quilt? Tell us, you say so it was a lot of strips involved.
it was a lot
What
of
was,
strips. I don't think it was any more than probably 35 by maybe 42 or something like that. And then it had like you know how you do the binding, and then you
yes.
do like 2.5 inches and pull it around. And that girl, it was about like that big. And I mean, I don't know,
Her
what the
binding was
specialty
out of
was, or what
control.
the allure was from the French people, but she put it in a magazine, and I was so raggedy. I mean, I didn't even write a description of it, right? So when it came up in the magazine, everybody else had like, "Oh, my quilt is X, Y, Z, and da da da." My quilt was just my quilt and my name. But to God be the glory, honey. It was in the magazine. Everybody was like, well, how your
Oh,
quilt get in a magazine? I don't know. I'm blessed and highly favored because
yes, amen
it
for
wasn't
that.
anything that I did any special, any more special, but they loved it, put it in Quilt Mania. And that was how I started my quilt journey. And after that, I was like, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
You have this is such a powerful story. So, about 20 years or so ago, you made a quilt a little over 20
Mhm,
years ago,
mhm,
and you have been making quilts ever since.
mhm.
Could you take us through what you imagine as your journey? What is the biggest difference between Kimberly Cartwright's first quilt that was still good enough to be in a magazine and Kimberly Cartwright's quilts right now? What has happened in your art practice as you see it in the past 2 decades that you are really excited about right now?
Well, there's more intention and
You write descriptions for your pieces now? You write descriptions for the quilts?
there's more intention. And then I think, it's a higher skill set.
Okay.
And I think I do my quilts with more purpose because I was just doing quilts. So I mean, whatever, this is a quilt. But I'm focusing now on African American history and then
Oh.
how quilts can tell our story as our people. And I don't know who said it. Somebody said that if you're gonna make art, it ought to be about something. So that's how I
Hmm.
I I continue in my art practice. If it's going to be art, it needs to be about something. And art is so powerful and it
Yes.
moves people to do certain things. It moves people, their emotions, it can change your idea about what it is that you're doing
Yes.
in life. So from that first little umbrella quilt until now, I've just evolved into a different person. And then when I was making quilts, I was working 9 to 5, honey, coming home, staying up just about all night making quilts. I have
Right?
quit my job. Okay, I retired. Sound the
You
same. That
ret-
sounds good, don't it? I quit
it
my job.
both retired slash quit my job slash don't have to worry about them people. However you want to put it, it sounds good to me.
I don't have to worry. So I can get up in the middle of the night if I want to. I can, quilt all day if I want to and not have to worry. And then I can just run around, wherever I want to go during the course of the day in pursuit
Yes.
of my art life. So
I
it's
love
so
it.
much fun. And that's the difference between Kimberly back then and Kimberly now. But I'm the same Kimberly,
Mhm.
but a little more seasoned, I think.
Yeah. And what I wanted to know a little bit more about is in terms of your quilts, how do you prefer to construct them? For those of you all who aren't quilters, there's lots of ways to put together a quilt. You can piece it together, you can do applique, you can do things that are like paper piece where lines are very sharp and very precise, or you can do it more freestyle, more hand cut. How do you describe your um, process in terms of putting things together? Do you applique? Do you piece? Do you use traditional blocks? How does one explain or experience a Kimberly Cartwright quilt?
I love raw edge applique. It's just like pencil drawing to me. And
Hmm.
to be able to take like those little swatches of fabric and manipulate them the way that you want to come out
Yes.
to like these caricatures that represent these moments in time. That's the way I
Yes.
like to quilt. And I do it because I can't measure what the daggone. Okay. I
I am
tried,
not cutting
I
90,000 one and
tried,
one quarter inch strips.
I tried real hard. And I was doing like little blocks, like I was gonna make like a checkerboard quilt.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was using probably like 3-inch blocks, and they were so wonky. They were coming out like this way and that way.
Oh
And
my
I was like, this
gosh.
is definitely not for me. Maybe I'll use these
Oh,
blocks as like some abstract
yes.
representation of what,
Yes.
quilters that quilt in that style can do.
Right, that's
But
right.
it's raw edge applique for
Okay,
me,
okay.
and I
I love it.
usually be sitting somewhere, maybe I'll have a thought, and wherever I am, whether I have
Yes.
a napkin or whether I have my composition book or
Right,
a
right.
corner of a newspaper, whatever, I get the feeling and I'll make a sketch. And then I'll take my sketches to a copy store and they blow my pictures up. And then after that, I make patterns from the sketches that I've drawn, and I've been having so much fun doing that. It's not like actual representations of people, but it's caricatures of the
Yes.
times and events that I
Yes.
want to bring forth. So that's what I do. I love it, and ooh, girl, I
I
make these. I made quilts. I use like little crumb pieces. I call them sugar quilts, but it's like
okay.
a version of crazy quilts where you just put all these pieces down, and then I don't sew them together like traditional. I do raw edge applique, and that allows me to do hand stitching with purpose. Like if I'm going on a road trip, which
Oh.
me and my husband are getting ready to go on another road trip. So
Yes.
while he's driving, I'm keeping him company and I'm sewing. And then when I get home, I'm able to take the machine and then I can make the stitches more permanent on the base. And when I get enough of a big base, and I put all the bases together and I come up with a bigger quilt. And they have been they've been stunning. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I do.
I love that so
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
There's so much freedom in what I am hearing you say. And the reason I say that is because often when people are learning to quilt, they give them a book, Easy Nine Patches or My First Quilt Block. They talk about things like the importance of the quarter-inch seam,
Hmm.
the importance of the quarter-inch foot in quilting is so important that I have 3 feet. I have 3 different presser feet that are supposed to make my quarter-inch seam that much more perfect. I'm talking to Kimberly Cartwright, and I'm like, a 9 patch hates to see her coming because Kimberly's like, oh, this not gonna be. You think it's supposed to be what? 2 by 2 by
Not gonna
air?
work.
No,
Not gonna
we're
work.
not gonna have that.
Not
That's
gonna
not gonna
work.
be for me.
Not gonna work. It's not gonna work out at all. I love. You know what? I love a lovely non-patch. Um, and I like checkerboards. That is like my favorite fabric
Yeah.
of all time. But I cannot perfect it. So when I do that, it's a little bit off, kilter. It's a little skewed, but it does represent like that form of traditional block sewing. I can't do it. Lisa, I want to do it really bad.
But
But
why? But why do you want to do that when everybody is learning to do that
I
and
know.
nobody is learning to do what you do? That's the thing. That's the
So
thing. You could pick that up anytime. I could send you a My First Quilt Block book right now, where you could go and practice cutting strips and things you already know how to do, but don't really enjoy. And I like so much when you describe your raw edge applique as something that is a combination of hand stitching and machine stitching. Can you talk about what that combination of working with your hand to do some hand stitching for the raw edge application and also bringing in the machine? Because some people tend to do one or the other, but to bring in both is really exciting. Can you share with us what brought you to that and why that process is important for your work?
sure. To work with like raw edge applique, this gives me so much freedom, first of all. And then with the hand stitching, it just makes it so much more personal. I
Personal.
love a good hand stitch. And I love like with the old timey traditional quilts where
Mhm.
where the women or whoever the sewist was would do those little tiny hand stitches all over the project. And then they would put the pieces together because they didn't have sewing machines. And they
Right?
would use those little tiny stitches to put those tremendous, like absolutely gorgeous pieces together. So when I'm able to use my hands, it just makes it so much more special. And I think that it
Yes.
makes it so much more precious and it makes it
Yes.
so much more interesting when you have
Mm.
sewing like that. And it pulls me in. And I think that it just releases another little part of me into the quilt work
Yes.
that I'm doing.
Yes.
I love a good hand stitch. And then it's slow and I get to be contemplative. Is that a word? That
Yeah,
sounds like a word.
contemplative.
That sounds
Yeah,
like a
that is a
word.
word.
I
That's
don't want
totally
to
a
make up
word.
any words while I'm on here. You
That's
know,
a totally word. That's totally a
that's totally
word.
a word. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's the way I feel when I'm able to do hand stitching and it just brings me a whole lot of joy. And I think that it adds to the value too. or whatever piece that
Hmm.
you work. We're talking about selling.
Oh,
One
right.
time I did a piece, and a woman came up to me and she said, "Well, what is the piece that you had to do the most work on?" And I said, "Oh, this hand stitch piece over here." She said, "I'll take it. I'll take it. Give me that one. The one that you put the most labor into." And I was like, "The hand stitching." And I probably should have
Wow.
sold it for more than I did, but
You absolutely should
that's
have.
under the bridge. And
Yes.
that's a difference between young Kimberly and like, seasoned Kimberly.
Okay, because Kimberly from 20 years ago was not collecting her coins, but
No,
Kimberly today is like coins must be
coins
collected.
must be collected. So, and then if you're out there like watching or listening, get your coins, because we have perfect example of people making amazing artwork, selling it for little or no money, and then having their artwork show up in unimaginable places for unimaginable riches, and then because that's what you valued it at, that's what you wanted at the time for it, that's what you get. And we didn't know
Yeah,
any better, but now we know better, so we
that's
do
right.
better. We
That's right.
we we think about these things and we put value per what labor and materials,
Yes.
time, sentiment
Yes.
that we put into
Yes.
these pieces. I want everybody to get paid for the work, the
Yes.
good work, the creative work that they
Yes.
do. And like fiber work is hot right now. So
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. The reason I appreciate you believing and promoting that quilters need to be compensated for the art that they create is that for too long it has gone under recognized and absolutely undersold. And quilt art has been diminished or retail value diminished because women are doing it. There's also the difference between folk art and fine art. I don't, it's a lot of bias and bigotry built into that, right? The things that you make with fabric aren't as fine as what you make with acrylics. And
and
even
yeah.
what you paint with a spray paint thing isn't as valuable as what you paint with a brush and watercolors. It seems to be something about the accessibility of the material that make lots of things that kind of make it terrible. But what I like is when you say, I am an artist and I am going to price my art at art prices. And because I have seen people buy something for $200 and then want to complain about the $200, and then that same piece end up in the back of a TV show on Netflix or something, because somebody put it in a set of a movie or whatever. I'm making that up.
No,
I'm
you're
totally
not. No,
making
you're
that up.
not. No, you're not. It's
But I'm just
not.
saying, I don't want Netflix to come after me because I don't listen to Netflix. That's just an
Oh,
example.
oh, the Netflix part, but the
The
part about
Netflix
it being
part,
showing up on the back of the wall in a movie set, that's real.
that's real.
That's
I just
real.
made that up.
That's real. That's real.
And you know what? There's so much also that happens, I think. If we love it, we cannot and will not put a price tag on it. Because if we love it, love is all that we need in return. And it's like, well, love is not going to pay my light bill. Love is not going to help me get this sewing machine that I want. I cannot give these people $8,000 worth of love. They need some greenbacks.
Mm-hmm.
US currency.
Absolutely.
And
Quite.
so I really appreciate the way you are inviting artists to take themselves and their work seriously by pricing in ways that make sense. Now, how do you develop that muscle? Do you talk to other artists that are working on the same tier as you? Because it's hard to do that for people who are going to be pricing their small quilts at like $12 or wanting to sell them at a garage sale or something like that. Like, how do you know if you're doing it right? How did you get to the point where you were like, this is how you price a thing?
Okay, I'm gonna give you an example of a woman who I was at a fair with, and we were both quilters, and she had this gorgeous quilt work, and she was selling it for $25. I said, honey,
$25.
if you don't put
A one in front
a
of that 25?
one or a two or something in front of that, I'm just gonna be so upset with you.
You know
I'm,
what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna buy all
I'm
your
gonna
stuff
buy.
and sell it. I'm gonna buy all your stuff. That's what I'm gonna do. You got 6 pieces here for
I'm
$25
gonna
each.
buy.
I'll buy
I'm gonna
all of
buy
them.
all of it. So I said, if you don't put another number in front of that, and and sell it for what it's worth, then I'm gonna be upset. She put the number in front of it, and how about somebody came up there and bought two? Quit playing. Quit playing with your time. For real. So I consult with other artists.
Beautiful.
I look at the prices that other artists, usually our counterpart people, are
Yes.
selling their work for. And then I price my work accordingly. How much time did I put into this? How much
Yes.
material do I have in this?
Yes.
And then what other people are selling their work for in the marketplace and being successful. I have a mentor who
Beautiful.
sells her work. Okay, I went to her studio, first of all, and I saw her work and I passed by and I said, ooh, you know what? I'll probably be able to buy one of the little ones. I went back there and the little ones was $325, and it was like a 5x7 piece.
That's right.
Three
That's
twenty
right.
five, and I'm selling my fabric postcards for $25.
No, if you don't put a 1 in front of that, Kimberly, I'm gonna be so mad at you.
So I'm just done. So I'm just done. I need to be paid for what I'm worth, and all of us who make
Yes.
and sell, we need to be
Yes.
compensated for what it is that we do. So that's how I get the muscle. And then people will come up to me and
Mm.
say $25 for my postcards, and I had to be really kind to say, I'm sorry, it's not in your price range today.
That's right.
I'm
Your
sorry, it's
budget
not.
does not determine my
No,
value.
it does not. So take heed. If
Yes.
somebody say, that costs too much. Why you pricing it that high? It's not in their budget, and it's not for them. It's for the
Yeah.
next person who comes along, and they have in their budget that they can support you. And I'm all for that. And the people who can't, the looky loos, that I'm for y'all too, because you
That's right.
might tell somebody about me, and they
Right.
might
Right.
come and buy my stuff. So
Exact.
everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
Everybody is definitely welcome. But in the end, I'm trying to sell this stuff. So,
That's right. Well,
I'm,
you're an
you know,
artist and it
I'm sounding,
deserves place.
yeah, and I'm sounding real bold too. But then some pieces is like, I'm never gonna sell ever as long as
Exactly.
I live. I'm never gonna sell. And
Exactly.
I had
And
to, I had to get out
mhm,
of the mindset that every piece that I made was that precious. Because if I stay in that mindset, I'm just gonna have a house full of quilts.
exactly. You'll be a
I'll be
collector
a collector of my own stuff.
of your own work, which is awesome.
It needs to get out of here and move around into the universe.
That's true.
And then,
That's true.
yeah,
That is what we want.
yeah.
I cannot believe that we are near the end of our time, and this is why we're going to do 2 episodes. Kimberly is going to come back and join us and talk about kindred spirits, a convergence of African American quilters. We'll do that a little bit later. But for now, we are going to ask you the question we ask everyone at the end of the Stitch Please
Okay,
podcast, and it is
okay.
this:
I'm ready.
the slogan of the Stitch Please podcast is that we will help you get your stitch together. Kimberly Cartwright, quilter extraordinaire, what advice do you have for us to help us get our stitch together?
To get your stitch together, make plans, be dedicated, follow through with your plans. Don't take yourself so seriously, and be prepared. If somebody wants to buy your work, be prepared to say yes.
Beautiful advice. And on that note, Kimberly, thank you so much for today's conversation. I am so glad that we were able to do this. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. You are my love. You are my heart. And I cannot wait to see you. I want to mention Kindred Spirits. Kindred Spirits, a convergence of African American quilters in Durham, will take place June 19th through the 21st in Durham, North Carolina at the Marriott in downtown Durham. And we're going to work on our registration. We're working very feverishly behind the scenes to make sure that all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. And it's a place for healing and sisterhood. I cannot wait for it. And I hope to see all of you there. Lisa, I know you're going to be there, baby.
Yes, I am.
And I can't wait to
Absolutely.
see you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful.
Stitch, please.
You've been listening to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. We appreciate you joining us this week and every week for stories that center Black women, girls, and femmes in sewing. We invite you to join the Black Women Stitch Patreon community with giving levels beginning at $5 a month. Your contributions help us bring the Stitch Please podcast to you every week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. And come back next week and we'll help you get your stitch together.